The Knights of Malta is a world organization with its threads weaving through business, banking, politics, the CIA, other intelligence organizations, P2, religion, education, law, military, think tanks, foundations, the United States Information Agency, the United Nations, and numerous other organizations. They are not the oldest, but are one of the oldest branches of the Order of the Quest in existence. The world head of the Knights of Malta is elected for a life term with the approval of the Pope. The Knights of Malta have their own constitution and are sworn to work toward the establishment of a new world order with the Pope at its head. Knights of Malta members are also powerful members of the CFR and the Trilateral Commission. The Knights of Malta is held up by a backbone consisting of nobility. Nearly half of the 10,000 members belong to Europe's oldest and most powerful families. This cements the alliance between the Vatican and the black nobility. The black nobility is mostly the rich and powerful of Europe.
Pope Francis has met with the head of the Knights of Malta, Marco Luzago. He gave the Pope a medal depicting Blessed Gerard Sasso, the Benedictine brother who founded the order in 1048. The Pope meets with the head of the Knights of Malta every year, usually close to the feast of St. John the Baptist, the order's patron saint. After praying a Hail Mary together, he took the opportunity to thank them for their work. The Knights of Malta is a sovereign entity which maintains diplomatic relations with countries around the world and even issues its own passports.
The Arenberg family was a sovereign family of the Holy Roman Empire of the German nation. We have a very long family history, nearly 1,000 years, and so we look at things, at the future, with a long-term view. My family stands for family values, for the promotion of our European histories and cultures. We understand the importance of a strong civil society and try to contribute modestly with our foundation to the well-being of future generations. How do we do that? Look at the website of the foundation and read what we do. I think that the facts speak for themselves. This is a huge challenge. It always was a huge challenge for every generation, and there is a learning curve for everybody. What seems to be extremely important for me nowadays is that once you have children, that means once you have accepted responsibility for young human beings, that you have to help them becoming responsible adults. We had, let's say, many investments in mining, agriculture, forestry. We have done that for centuries in many, many countries. Nowadays, if I talk about myself here, if I speak about myself, I'm a social activist for decades, a cultural entrepreneur, and also a businessman, because to pay for all activities of the Arenberg Foundation, you need to have some money. And thanks God, I have the backing of my family to achieve these goals, and let's say we also enjoy the support of other people. First of all, I would like to remind the public that in Europe we still have 10 monarchies, Belgium being one of those 10 monarchies. We have, let's say, a nobility that expands, more or less 1,200 noble families in Belgium, more or less 30,000 people out of a population of 11.3 million Belgians. The members of the nobility are the gatekeepers of our living, of our collective living memory. In the past, since we were at the top of the social ladder,
Donaueschingen zu zeigen. So ließen sie sich im Kaiserwagen des Fürstenhauses von 4 prächtig herausgeputzten Pferden durch die Stadt kutschieren.
Imposant steht das Schloss im Herzen Donaueschingens, das als repräsentative fürstliche Residenz dient, umrahmt vom fürstlichen Park sowie Quelle und Kirche St. Johann.
Welcome to Nelahoseves, one of Bohemia's finest Renaissance castles, located just 35 kilometers north of Prague and perched above the Vltava River, overlooking the birthhouse of the great Czech composer Antonín Dvořák. This impressive two-storied chateau, with its beautiful sgraffito decorations, dates from the 1550s and houses the Lobkowicz collections, one of Europe's oldest, finest, and most intact family collections spanning nearly 700 years. Come join us as we experience its inspirational interiors. It is only fitting that a bright and grand reception room featuring some of the finest furniture and old master paintings would be reserved for welcoming only the most important guests and visitors to the castle. All under the watchful eye of Hygeia, the Greek goddess of health and hygiene, in which her name is derived. She is depicted here in Sir Peter Paul Rubens' magnificent painting entitled Hygeia Nourishing the Sacred Serpent, dating to around 1614. Partially robed, she is portrayed nourishing a snake, the identifying symbol of her father, Asclepius, god of medicine.
The great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him.
Pope Francis briefly greeted the Spanish monarchs at the end of the canonization ceremony on Sunday. But on Monday morning, he met with the royal couple for almost an hour. It's been the Pope's longest private audience to date.
Buenos días, Majestad. ¿Cómo está? Los benedictinos dicen Benito Aspes Benedictus.
Their private audience lasted 53 minutes. They talked about everything from youth unemployment to the conflict in Ukraine. As a gift, they gave Pope Francis an edition of the complete works of Saint Teresa of Avila and Saint John of the Cross. In a way, these items were a symbolic invitation for the Pope to visit Spain in 2015 to mark the birth of Saint Teresa. The Pope gave the couple a bas-relief of Bernini's original design of St. Peter's Square, which included a third row of columns. After exchanging gifts, the Pope greeted the Spanish delegation and even joked with the foreign minister. The Pope then walked them out as they left, but he asked that they pass along a message to the rest of the royal family. During their visit to the Vatican, the Spanish king and queen met with the Secretary of State, Pietro Parolin. They gave him a replica of a catechism volume in an indigenous language. King Juan Carlos has met 7 popes. He was baptized by Pius XII, and John XXIII gave him the clearance to marry Sophia from Greece, who was then Orthodox. And then Paul VI welcomed him after his reign began, and they also met John Paul I. The king and John Paul II had a great friendship. He also met 3 times with Benedict XVI during his pontificate. This was the first meeting between the king and Pope Francis.
The first official visit from Spain's newly crowned monarchs to Pope Francis was all smiles and courtesy. King Felipe repeated a saying that the Pope himself had told his father Juan Carlos to let him through the door first, saying, "The altar boy always goes first." The 3 met privately for close to 40 minutes. The Pope thanked Felipe and Queen Letizia for visiting him just days after ascending to the throne. He also talked to them about the importance of promoting dialogue and collaboration between the church and the state for the good of all Spanish society. After, the king introduced his royal entourage, including his doctor and 4 guards. As a gift, the royal couple gave the Pope a copy of a book written by Spanish Jesuit Baltasar Gracian, The Art of Worldly Wisdom. The original version is kept in Argentina. Before saying goodbye, the king noticed that one of the photographers had not received a rosary, so the Pope searched for one himself. Once again, the monarchs used that time to invite the Pope to visit Spain. After the papal audience, King Felipe and Queen Letizia met with the Vatican Secretary of State, Pietro Parolin. The couple had already visited Pope Francis at the Vatican before. On March 19, 2013, they attended his inaugural Mass, but as Prince and Princess of Asturias.
Nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Your Royal Highness.
How do you do? Welcome.
Thank you. This is what you call home?
Yes, indeed. Saint-Tropez home, yes.
Especially the summer, but yes, we share our lives between Italy, Monaco and Paris. My branch, anyway, descends from the branch of Bourbon of France. So it's an old family, as you know, because it started with Hugues Capet. The Bourbon has reigned in France, in Spain, in southern Italy, in Parma, in Luxembourg. And at that time, the marriages were kind of geopolitical marriages. So we have been related, and we have many cousins throughout Europe because of those marriages. So at the end we are all calling each other or dear uncle or dear aunt or dear cousin, and that's it.
As Queen Victoria used to say, no, all the royal families is one big family. That's why she was actually called the grandmother of Europe.
My wife and also now the children, we're going a lot in different places and even out of Italy, of course. Plus the Constantine Order of St. George, which is an order of knighthood that my family has.
As the head of the royal family, my husband really has a role of enormous representation. I think it's some kind of a duty. It's something that you owe to a lot of people who in Italy, and not only in Italy, still have a memory of the big kingdom of the two Sicilies, and still embodies the cultural aspect of it all. So it is something where you have that weight on your shoulders, you know you have that responsibility, and you have to go and travel, you have to be there, you have to always hear if there are problems, if you want to help to people that in different parts of the world are asking to be supported by the Constantinian Order of St. George.
Well, the title of Castro is a title that the last king of two Sicilies used also because of the Farnese connection. It's close to Rome.
This marriage is also an opportunity for royal families to get together and party. Some, like Prince Charles of Bourbon de Sicilia and his wife, live here. Just before the wedding, we met the Princess Camilla, and she told us about her friendship with Albert and Charlene. Princess Camilla, you're a close friend of Charlene. You are, of course, also family, as the Bourbon de Sicilia and the Grimaldi family are cousins. So you know the two of them very well.
Donc vous connaissez bien ce jeune couple qui se marie?
Oui, je les connais très bien.
Yes, I know them both very well, but I know Prince Albert better, as we've been friends for a very long time.
C'était tout à fait naturel que je lui
That's why I asked him to be a witness at my marriage, which he gladly accepted.
mon témoin de mariage qu'il a accepté bien volontiers.
It is a deep friendship and one that has come a very long way.
Profonde, l'amitié qui revient de loin.
The Prince of Monaco, Albert II, met with the Pope at the Vatican. This marks their third meeting, but the first with the prince's wife, Charlene. The princess followed protocol by wearing a white dress, which is technically allowed for the Catholic wives of monarchs.
Okay, this video is going to be a short video on the Vatican is going to be releasing the archives and documents of Pope Pius XII, which was the Bishop of Rome from 1939 to 1958 during World War II. And he was actually also cardinal, German cardinal, before Second World War, and had a very instrumental hand in setting up Nazism with the Catholic Party in Germany at that time, with Franz von Papen. I'll put some pictures in this video so I don't have to go through it all myself and you can read it for what it says. But I just wanted to go over this quickly because they're going to say that they will reveal the greatness of Pius XII. And the reason they're putting out the files of Eugenio Pacelli, who is Pope Pius XII, who is often the subject of superficial criticisms. Obviously, the truth is out there to anybody who researches it that they were very much involved in bringing about the Nazi Party in fascist Italy and going against even not just the Allied powers, but Russia itself to bring about Catholicism in all these countries, as well as destroying France in the process. This was dated March 4th, 2019. I'll probably be expecting, like many people who know the reality of the truth, that they will bring out smear campaigns, which they've already started to do against anyone who's going to speak out against this. They're also going to deny and minimize and defame any type of character that wants to speak out against this, because that's what the Jesuits do, that's what the Vatican does. But then they say here, historians will be able to research the pontificate of Pope Pius XII without prejudice. Without prejudice, yes, that, like that's going to happen. Like that's going to happen. They're going to spin as much as they want. They tell you right in the opening line, will reveal the greatness of. So they're not going to tell you a lot about what really happened. About him signing concordats, which you can even go here. You can go to the Catholic Library and just see signed Eugenio Cardinal Pacelli and Franz von Papen. Franz von Papen was allowed to get off of a lot of war crimes based on his ties to the Vatican. This was done July 20th, 1933. This is the watered-down Catholic version. If you go to the New Advent website, the Concordat with the German Reich in 1933. So this watered-down version, you won't be able to get a lot of the real type that was put into it, but you'll see, I think it's Article 16. Before bishops take possession of their diocese, they are to take an oath of fealty either to the Reich representative or of the state concerned or to the president of the Reich, according to the following formula. Before God and on the Holy Gospels, I swear and promise as becomes a bishop, loyalty to the German Reich and to the state of. I swear and promise to honor the legally constituted government and to cause the clergy of my diocese to honor it in the performance of my spiritual office and in the solicitude for the welfare and interests of the German Reich. I will endeavor to avoid all detrimental acts which might endanger it, which means I will fight against anybody who comes against it. That's what I mean by they watered it down.
And there came one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither. I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness. And I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy. having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead was a name written: Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. The beast that thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit. And go into perdition. And the woman which thou sawest is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth.
When the Reformation threatened the power of the Catholic Church and drew millions of people away from its clutches, Satan established a counter-Reformation designed to nullify the threat and reassert its position of dominance. At the Council of Trent from 1545 to 1563, a commission of cardinals was put together to clean up the Catholic Church and to reassert its position of authority as the only true Church of God. Fundamental to this movement was the establishment of new religious orders. The most famous order to be created at this time, and the one that has gone on to become the largest in the world, was the Society of Jesus, or as they are more commonly known, the Jesuits. They would become one of the most infamous organizations in history. It's important we explore the Jesuits because it gives us deep insight into the mind and tactics of our enemy, but for that same reason I want to preface it with a warning that the next few parts will be dealing with some very twisted and evil themes. The founder of the Jesuits was a man called Don Inigo Lopez, who was born into an extremely wealthy family in the Basque region of Spain in 1491. He later changed his name to Ignatius Loyola. As a young man, Loyola was said by police records to be proud, violent, vindictive and dangerous. His great life's ambition was to become a powerful military commander, which was going well until one particular battle where a cannonball broke one of his legs and heavily wounded the other. This event effectively ended his military ambitions. He was removed from the field of battle, underwent numerous painful surgical operations and spent a long time in recovery. During this period, Loyola had a nervous breakdown as he struggled to come to terms with the end of his army career and the end of his life's ambition. In this fragile mental state, as he lay there with little else to occupy his mind, he began reading a number of fanciful religious texts about the works of the Catholic saints. Particularly inspired by the life of St. Francis of Assisi, he set out to emulate his deeds and those of others like him. He began to envision Jesus as a type of great military commander, and thought that although his physical army career was over, he could instead become a kind of general in Jesus' army instead, the goal of which would be to capture the world. Now as a cripple, he made his way across Spain to the mountains of Montserrat, where there was a Benedictine monastery. Within this monastery was a sacred goddess idol called the Black Virgin of Montserrat, which he stood before in vigil for 3 days. There he committed himself and his work to her. By doing so, he committed himself to the demonic goddess Asherah. From here, he decided that he would go to Jerusalem and conquer the Muslim world for Catholicism. His ambitions were halted, however, as Barcelona had the plague, and he was forced to stay in the small town of Manresa for 10 months instead. For those 10 months, he lived in a cave, torturing himself physically and mentally, until he began to have dreams and visions. Through these hallucinations, he claimed that the secret doctrine of the Catholic Church was taught to him by a form in the air near him, and this form gave him much consolation because it was exceedingly beautiful. It somehow seemed to have the shape of a serpent and had many things that shone like eyes, but were not eyes. He received much delight and consolation from gazing upon this object, but when the object vanished, he became disconsolate. Here we see the telltale signs of a demonic cave revelation, exactly like that which Muhammad experienced. More explicitly than Muhammad's encounter, the being came in the form of a serpent rather than an angel of light. Similar to Muhammad, Loyola found himself prone to depression after contact. After the 10-month period in the cave, Loyola proceeded to Jerusalem, where he approached the Franciscan monks. They told him to go home as they did not want any political trouble. It was upon his return to Spain that he started formal training by studying theology at various universities. At this time he, along with a small band of companions, also started making disciples of others. While Loyola preached, it was noted that some of his female followers became so hysterically zealous that one fell senseless, another sometimes rolled about on the ground, another had been seen in the grip of convulsions or shuddering and sweating in anguish. Clearly demonic activity was at work following his cave experience and commitment to the demonic Asherah idol, and for the rest of his life he was known for having mystic powers. In the coming years he would be thrown into jail twice under the suspicion that he was a member of the Alumbrado, or as we know them, the Illuminati, and we'll discover more about them later. The description of people falling senseless and going into convulsions may remind you of scenes from Christian churches in recent times. To deal with that, I want to refer you to a 3-part series called Kundalini Warning, which I'll provide links for below. Please watch all the way to the end for a balanced opinion. By 1534, Ignatius Loyola had 6 key companions, all of whom he had met at university, and they formed the initial military brotherhood of the Society of Jesus. On the morning of 15th of August 1534, they met in the crypt of the Church of Our Lady of the Martyrs at Montmartre, and took solemn vows committing themselves to their lifelong work. As a man with an army background, Loyola created his order with the principles and disciplines that he had been used to as a soldier. The leader demanded the unquestioning obedience from his inferiors. Loyola was made the first superior general of the order, and they began the work of opposing the Reformation and re-establishing the dominance of the Catholic Church in Europe and around the world. They made their way to Rome where, in time, their society was accepted by the Pope, who at that time was Paul III. Paul III had seen the need of such a military order to repel the progress that the Protestant Reformation was making, as the Catholic Church seemed powerless by its own means. The Pope invested in them the authority to excommunicate all who would hinder or who do not aid the society, to confer orders, preach and administer the sacraments, to change their general, to absolve heretics as well as imprison the excommunicate, to exercise episcopal functions, to confirm, exercise, dispense, etc., to disguise themselves, to carry movable altars, give plenary indulgences, to live exempt, free from secular powers, taxes, as well as jurisdiction, authority, sentence, and command of any other ordinary delegate, judge, magistrate, from any search. In other words, the Jesuits were given authority from the Catholic Church to operate above the law and to employ any means necessary to do their work. With this remit, in time, the Jesuits became the most prominent and powerful of Catholic weapons against the Reformation.
Flammas eius, Lucifer matutinus inveniat. Ille in quam Lucifer qui nescit occasum, Christus filius tuus, qui regressus ab inferis, humano generis serenus iluxit, et tecum vivit et regnat in saecula saeculorum.
Well, Reverend Gabriele Amorth made headlines around the world recently when he said the devil was present in the Vatican. You're talking about something very real, aren't you?
Absolutely, very real.
As to the devil's presence in the Vatican, he says that's no surprise. He once had to perform an exorcism on another exorcist.
The first thing we need to do if we're going to find out if the devil is at the Vatican is take a tour underneath the Vatican. As we arrive underneath the Vatican, we see that it's laid out in a number of rooms marked by letters, as we could see in this aerial view map. As we move to room U, here we find the shock of all shocks. Here on the wall, it says there is a depiction of Lucifer, that is, the light bearer, the morning star. On the opposite of the wall, there is a drawing of Vesper, the evening star, cosmic symbol of the human life cycle. We find out that when we get to room U, here we have a clear depiction of Lucifer underneath the Vatican at St. Peter's Basilica. We ask ourselves, why are they keeping this image of Lucifer underneath the Vatican? Again, you would think if you're a Christian church, you would not want to have any of these images. They'll go on and say, oh, well, we're saving it because it's a UNESCO heritage site or something like that. This is always their excuse, saving it for the sake of art. But for the true Christian, this is not an excuse, because we know if you're giving glory and propaganda to false deities and false pagan gods, what are you doing? You're in essence supporting the evil spiritual realm. This cannot be from God. And since Rome claims itself to be the one true church, you would think they would lead by example. But what kind of example is this? That you have a depiction of Lucifer underneath the Vatican for countless hundreds and hundreds of years? Now this image here underneath the Vatican has been there since their claim, which would be Constantine. We would know that he was the first one that built this basilica. And so again, we ask ourselves, why are they keeping this depiction of Lucifer underneath the Vatican?
On the other, the Philaosmosis leads us directly to God. And thus to the transcendent. Us directly to God.
This is the last day of the Pope's visit. Now, since he's been here, he's said and done a lot of things, but the thing that stuck out to me the most is something he said during, I guess it was a mass, where he came out and said that the life of Jesus ultimately ended in the failure on the cross. And if at times our efforts and work seem to fail and not produce fruit, we need to remember that we are followers of Jesus Christ, and his life, humanly speaking, ended in failure, the failure of the cross. Then he went on to talk about the dangers of being comfortable with surroundings and things such as that, which is a whole nother topic in and of itself. But he says the failure of Jesus, the failure of the cross, even though the Bible clearly states that Jesus knew what was going to happen to him, far as the cross was concerned, how he is going to lay his life down. He even said, Lord, if it is your will, take this bitter cup from me, but not your will, but not my will, your will be done. And particularly we know this when we look at John 17 and 18. Therefore doth my Father love me, because I laid my life down, that I might take it again. No man taketh it from me, but I lay it down myself. Which is to say, nobody took his life from him on the cross. He laid it down willingly. He knew what was going to happen to him. So to say that his life in general, the cross in particular, was a failure is something I'm very disappointed to see from a supposed spiritual leader.
The Secretary General of the United Nations has invited the Pope to address this distinguished assembly of nations. In my own name and that of the entire Catholic community.
Repeat that again.
Yes, the very first remarks out of his mouth, the translator will say it. I flipped out, Alex. He says, I come to you in my own name, in the name of the Catholic community. He did not come in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. I never saw him do the sign of the cross while he was here, any of that stuff. This guy is an imposter. I am come in my Father's name, and you receive me not. If another shall come in his own name, him you will receive. In my own name and that of the entire Catholic community.
So there he said it, in my own name and in the entire Catholic community. That's who he's coming in the name of. He's not saying he's coming in the name of God or the Father or Jesus Christ or the Holy Spirit. He's just keeping it to him. So he's personalizing.
And call no man your father upon the earth, for one is your Father which is in heaven.
Priest Andrew Pinsent holds advanced degrees in theology from the Pontifical Gregorian University in Rome, as well as a doctorate in particle physics from Oxford. In January 2015, he wrote, "Being both a priest and a former particle physicist at CERN, I am often asked to give talks on faith and science. Quite often, young people ask me the following question: how can you be a priest and believe in the Big Bang? To which I am delighted to respond, we invented it. Or more precisely, priest Georges Lemaitre invented the theory that is today called the Big Bang, and everyone should know about him. the author of the Big Bang Theory was none other than the Jesuit-trained priest Georges Lemaitre. On October 28, 2014, Sarah Kerr reported,
Speaking to members of the Pontifical Academy of Science, the Pope said it is possible to believe in both, insisting God was responsible for the Big Bang from which all life evolved.
L'inizio del mondo non è opera del caos che deve a un altro la sua origine, ma deriva direttamente da un principio supremo che crea per amore. Il Big Bang, che oggi si pone all'origine del mondo, non contraddice l'intervento creatore divino, ma lo esige. L'evoluzione nella natura non contrasta con la nozione di creazione, perché l'evoluzione presuppone la creazione degli esseri che si evolvono.
The papacy is widely regarded as a bastion of piety and moral authority. But throughout its long and storied history, the Vatican has been home to some of the most scandalous and sinful popes the world has ever seen. From committing murder and adultery to engaging in financial corruption and even incest, these pontiffs have left a dark stain on the Church and tested the faith of its followers. Join me as we delve into the shocking and often gruesome tales of the most sinful popes in the history of the Vatican and discover just how far some men have fallen from grace. Quickly, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on videos like this. First on our list is Pope Alexander VI, who was elected Pope in 1492. Pope Alexander VI was one of the most infamous popes in the history of the Vatican. He was born Rodrigo Borgia in Spain in 1431 and was elected Pope in 1492. Alexander VI was known for his many mistresses and illegitimate children. He even held lavish orgies in the Vatican and was accused of incest with his daughter Lucrezia. Alexander VI was also notorious for his political corruption and bribery. One of the most notorious incidents during Alexander VI's papacy was the murder of Giovanni Borgia, his own son. Giovanni was rumored to be having an affair with his own sister, Lucrezia, and was murdered along with his servant in 1497. Alexander VI was suspected of ordering the assassination. Despite his many sins, Alexander VI was a great patron of the arts and commissioned some of the most famous works of the Renaissance. Next on the list is Pope John XII, whose reign lasted between 955 to 964. Pope John XII was elected Pope at the age of 18 in 955 and was one of the youngest popes in history. However, his youth did not stop him from indulging in a life of debauchery and sin. He was accused of adultery, incest, and even murder. John XII was known for his many mistresses and was rumored to have turned the papal palace into a brothel. He was also accused of blinding, mutilating, and castrating his own subordinates. His actions were so heinous that he was eventually deposed by a council of bishops. It is worth noting that some scholars have argued that the charges against John XII may have been exaggerated or politically motivated, and that the historical record of his reign is somewhat unreliable. Pope John's reign was also marked by conflict with the Holy Roman Emperor Otto I, who deposed him in 963 for his immoral conduct and elected a new pope in his place. Next is Pope Benedict IX, who reigned from 1032 to 1044. Pope Benedict was elected pope at the age of 20 in 1032 and was known for his corrupt and immoral behavior. He was accused of simony, or the buying and selling of church offices, and was rumored to have sold the papacy multiple times. Benedict IX was also known for his many mistresses and was accused of committing rape and murder. His behavior was so outrageous that he was eventually deposed by the German Emperor, Henry III. Regardless of his many sins, Benedict IX was later elected pope again in 1045, only to be deposed once more later that same year. Pope Julius II, who reigned from 1503 to 1513. He was known for his military prowess and was one of the most powerful popes in history. He was also known for his violent temper and was rumored to have murdered his own secretary in a fit of rage. Pope Julius was also accused of nepotism or favoritism towards his own family members. He appointed his own nephews to powerful positions within the church, which was a common practice at the time but was still seen as a form of corruption. One of the most well-known scandals involving Pope Julius concerns his relationship with his mistress, Julia Farnese, who was known as La Bella. Farnese was the wife of a prominent Roman nobleman, but she became involved with Pope Julius and allegedly wielded significant influence over him. It was said that she convinced him to make her brother, Alessandro Farnese, a cardinal at the age of 14, and that she used her position to advance her family's interests. Despite his many sins, Julius II was also responsible for commissioning some of the most famous works of art in the Vatican, including the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel by Michelangelo. Pope Sergius III was the Bishop of Rome from 904 to 911 AD. He is a controversial figure in the history of the papacy, and his reign was marked by a number of scandals and controversies. According to some accounts, Pope Sergius was involved in the murder of his predecessor, Pope Leo V, and he is also said to have had an affair with a woman named Marozia, who later became his mistress and wielded significant influence over the papacy. Pope Sergius was also accused of appointing his own illegitimate son to the position of cardinal, which was a clear violation of church law. His behavior was so outrageous that he was eventually deposed by a council of bishops. Regardless of his many sins, Sergius was responsible for stabilizing the papacy during a period of political turmoil in Italy. He also oversaw the completion of the Lateran Palace, which would become the papal residence for centuries to come. Pope Urban VI, born Bartolomeo Pregnano, was the head of the Roman Catholic Church from 1378 to 1389. He was elected pope in April 1378 and was the first pope from outside the College of Cardinals in 80 years, and was known for his violent temper and erratic behavior. He was accused of physically assaulting his own cardinals and bishops, and many of them eventually abandoned him and elected their own pope, creating the Western Schism. Pope Urban's behavior was so outrageous that many people believed he was mentally unstable. He was eventually deposed by a council of bishops, and a new pope was elected to reunify the church. Despite his many sins, Pope Urban was responsible for initiating many important reforms within the church, including the establishment of the College of Cardinals and the creation of new dioceses throughout Europe. Next up is Pope Clement VII, who was the head of the Roman Catholic Church from 1523 to 1534. Pope Clement VII was known for his political corruption and his involvement in the infamous sack of Rome in 1527. He was a member of the powerful Medici family of Florence and was elected pope at the age of 47. He was accused of being a puppet of the powerful Medici family and was rumored to have accepted bribes in exchange for church appointments. Clement VII's most notorious sin, however, was his role in the sack of Rome. In 1527, the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V invaded Rome and looted the city, killing thousands of people and destroying many of the city's treasures. Clement VII was accused of being too weak to defend the city and was even rumored to have made a secret deal with Charles V in exchange for his own safety. But despite his many sins, Clement VII was a patron of the arts and commissioned many important works of art in the Vatican, including the Loggia della Benedizione by Raphael. And lastly, Pope Leo X, born Giovanni di Lorenzo de' Medici, was the head of the Catholic Church from 1513 until his death in 1521. Pope Leo X was known for his lavish lifestyle and his love of luxury. He was accused of wasting church funds on expensive banquets, hunting parties, and other extravagances. Leo X was also accused of being more interested in politics than in the spiritual well-being of his flock. He was rumored to have made secret deals with powerful rulers and to have ignored the needs of his own people. Despite his many sins, Leo X was a patron of the arts. He commissioned many important works of art for the Vatican, including the famous frescoes in the Raphael rooms, and he also commissioned the construction of the famous St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. Throughout the history of the papacy, there have been many popes who have been guilty of serious sins and moral failings. From sexual immorality to political corruption, these popes have tarnished the reputation of the Catholic Church and brought shame upon the papacy.